The Great Hall of the Galactic Border Station had never seen anything like this. The moment the human delegation stepped through the shimmering airlock, silence fell like a curtain, hundreds of alien eyes fixed on them, watching every step they took. For humanity, this was a milestone, a carefully arranged first contact with a species the Galactic Council itself considered strange even by galactic standards. They were a matriarchal civilization, elegant, tall, with silver markings flowing across their translucent skin like living constellations. The human soldiers, diplomats, and scientists expected formal greetings, stiff rituals, maybe a little tension, but nothing could have prepared them for what came next. As the lead female alien stepped forward, her gaze calm and unreadable, the entire welcoming group of alien women moved in perfect sync, raised their hands to their ceremonial dresses, and revealed what was beneath as a sign of greeting. For a heartbeat, no one moved, no one spoke. The silence stretched across the station like a vacuum. Then, one of the young human soldiers let out a nervous laugh, which echoed through the chamber and broke whatever strange spell had fallen over them. The aliens stood proud, completely unaware that their ancient cultural greeting had just collided headfirst with human awkwardness. To them, this was tradition, a sign of respect, trust, and peace. To the humans, it was the most bizarre diplomatic moment in space history. The human commander blinked once, twice, fighting the urge to rub his face. This was not in the briefing. Back on Earth, they had been trained to handle negotiations, language barriers, even military tension, but no one had prepared them for this. It wasn't hostile. It wasn't aggressive, but it was unforgettable. And that, in the strange world of interstellar politics, made it dangerous. Because first impressions in space could ripple through entire empires. The commander stepped forward, clearing his throat. Every camera in the chamber was recording, broadcasting this event to not just the Galactic Council but to a galaxy waiting to see what humanity would do next. Behind him, the soldiers tried and failed to look serious. The scientists whispered frantically into their translators. The aliens tilted their heads, confused by the hesitation, their eyes wide and strangely innocent. And that was the moment the commander realized. This was a test not of power or force, but of how humanity handled the unfamiliar. If they mocked or rejected the greeting, the alliance could collapse before it even began. So he did something no one expected. He placed his hand over his heart, bowed slightly, and said, "Humanity accepts your greeting." A wave of strange, melodic laughter filled the hall, soft and musical, like water flowing over glass. The alien women smiled, not with sharp teeth or hidden malice, but with open delight. To them, this was a success. Humanity had not turned away. They had accepted the gesture of trust. But beneath the lightness of the moment, something else stirred. Hidden among the diplomatic ceremonies, powerful factions of the Galactic Council were watching closely. This wasn't just a meeting. It was a crack in an old silent wall. A new alliance could shift the balance of power in space. Humanity was the wild card. No one knew if they would become peacekeepers, rivals, or something far more dangerous. As the ceremony continued, the commander couldn't shake the feeling that the room was holding more secrets than anyone was saying out loud. The alien women moved gracefully, their gestures practiced, every motion carrying centuries of tradition. But every so often, their eyes flickered toward the high balconies above, where silent observers, figures cloaked in shimmering robes, watched with unblinking intensity. The human team noticed too. The laughter faded slowly into uneasy quiet as they were led through the corridors of the alien station. This wasn't just hospitality. This was surveillance evaluation. Every word, every gesture mattered. And behind those curious alien smiles, there was a council of power watching to see if humanity would falter. As the humans reached the inner chamber, the atmosphere shifted. The architecture itself seemed to hum with life. Soft lights pulsed under the floor. Walls curved in organic patterns like coral reefs suspended in air. The alien leader, taller than the rest, with intricate silver lines flowing down her arms, stopped before an archway and turned to face the humans. Her voice, soft but resonant, echoed through the chamber. "We greet humanity not with fear, but with truth, she said through the translator. And with that, the walls around them rippled, revealing holographic images of their civilization's history. Worlds once burning, fleets once broken, empires once kneeling. Their greeting wasn't about showing skin. It was about showing transparency. In their culture, to reveal was to trust. The humans fell silent, understanding at last the weight of the ritual. This wasn't some comedic misunderstanding. This was a message to the galaxy. We hide nothing. But the deeper truth was far more dangerous. Their race had survived a war the Galactic Council had buried, a war so old few still spoke of it. They were survivors, not innocents. Their traditions had been forged in fire, their smiles built on quiet strength. And now they had chosen humanity. The commander's comlink buzzed softly in his ear, messages from the human fleet waiting outside the alien system. The council was already reacting. Whispers of fear and anger spread through the political channels. Humanity had just accepted a bond no other race dared to make. To some, that meant hope. To others, it meant war. But the commander stood steady, feeling the weight settle on his shoulders like armor. He looked at the alien leader and nodded. Then we trust you too. As the two groups moved deeper into the ceremonial hall, a strange pulse reverberated through the structure, like a heartbeat beneath the floor. The alien leader stepped closer, lowering her voice. You must understand, she said. Not all who watch want this peace. Her eyes flickered toward the high balconies again. In the shadows, cloaked figures shifted. Humanity had walked into more than a greeting. They had walked into a storm. The alien women had offered trust in their way, but the galaxy was already plotting what that trust might cost. The commander clenched his jaw, aware that the path ahead was lined with danger, and that every move from here would echo through the stars. The greeting had been strange. It had been awkward, but it had also lit a fuse, and in the vast cold of space, sparks like that rarely died quietly. As the ceremony reached its final moment, and the alien leader raised her hands in an ancient vow, humanity stood not as guests, but as players in a game the galaxy had long kept hidden. What began with laughter might end with war, but for the first time they were ready to face it. And as the scene faded to the silent orbit beyond the station, a fleet of unknown ships began to move in the distance. Someone had been waiting for this. The stars were listening. Thank you for listening to this story. If you enjoyed it, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more HFY Sci-Fi tales. Your support helps keep these stories alive, and many more are waiting in the stars. The silence after the ceremony was louder than the laughter that had filled the great hall. It was the kind of silence that carried meaning, weight, and unspoken calculations. The kind of silence that didn't belong to a light-hearted greeting but to something much deeper. Something that had been planned long before humanity ever stepped foot on the station. As the human delegation was escorted down the curved corridors, the commander walked at the front, his boots tapping against the smooth floor, every sound echoing like a drumbeat in the cavernous halls. The alien women followed closely, their elegant steps making no noise at all, their translucent skin glowing softly in the light, as if their bodies were made to belong among the stars. But their beauty wasn't what held his attention. It was their eyes. They didn't look like they were leading guests. They looked like they were escorting someone into the heart of something bigger. The scientists whispered behind him, trying to make sense of the cultural layers, their translators feeding them fragments of the alien language, words like reveal, truth, bond. But none of it explained why this particular greeting carried so much tension. The commander remembered the subtle tremor in the alien leader's hands when she lifted her ceremonial dress, the way her eyes had flicked toward the shadowed balconies above. And he knew then this wasn't just a cultural display. It was a signal. To whom, he wasn't sure yet. The diplomatic mission had been sold to humanity as a soft entry into the alien sector, a way to build goodwill, trade, and possibly alliances. But standing here, under the watch of silent figures above and escorted by women whose smiles never quite reached their eyes, it felt less like diplomacy and more like walking across thin ice. As they approached a wide circular chamber, the walls began to pulse faintly with living light, as if the entire station was a single living organism breathing around them. The alien leader raised her hands and the walls rippled open, revealing a massive open space that seemed to hang suspended in starlight. At the center was a ring of seats carved from some iridescent material that shifted colors with every heartbeat. High above, perched like shadows carved from night, sat the observers, the cloaked figures who had watched the greeting. Their faces were hidden, but their presence was felt like a weight pressing down on everyone in the room. The commander didn't need a translator to understand. This was no longer just a cultural exchange. This was judgment. The alien leader turned to face the humans, her movements slow and deliberate. "Now," the translator whispered through the commander's earpiece. "The real greeting begins." She stepped into the center of the ring and placed her hands over her heart. One by one, the alien women joined her, forming a perfect circle around the humans. Their dresses shimmered as they moved, light bending and twisting around them like strands of a web. Then they began to speak in unison, a soft, melodic chant that filled the chamber with strange beauty and quiet dread. The language was alien, but the rhythm wasn't. It was ritual. It was old. The commander stiffened when he noticed movement above. The observers leaned forward, like predators watching prey wander too close. He didn't like this. Something about the timing, the symmetry, the way this was all too perfectly staged, set off instincts he thought he'd buried years ago in the war. Behind him, one of the younger soldiers whispered nervously, "Sir, this doesn't feel right," and the commander agreed. First contact ceremonies were supposed to be about mutual respect, controlled interaction, slow introductions. But this wasn't controlled. This felt like walking into the middle of someone else's test. The alien leader's voice rose higher, echoing through the chamber as her eyes locked onto the commander's. The translator stumbled for a second before catching up. "Trust is revealed in truth, and truth is revealed in skin." He almost flinched at the wording, understanding now that their greeting wasn't just symbolic. It was sacred. A ritual of stripping away deception, of making yourself vulnerable in the most literal sense. But beneath that innocent tradition lay a sharp political edge. By accepting the greeting, humanity had unknowingly bound itself to their culture's oath of transparency. And in their history, breaking such an oath had consequences, bloody ones. The alien leader extended her hand toward him. Every pair of alien eyes in the room fixed on that gesture. The humans behind him tensed, unsure what to do. If he refused, it could mean disrespect, possibly sparking a diplomatic rift before the talks even began. If he accepted, it could mean stepping deeper into something humanity wasn't ready for. And yet, as the watchers above waited, the commander saw something behind the leader's calm face: fear. She wasn't just performing a ritual. She was also trapped in it. He stepped forward, slowly, and took her hand. The air in the chamber changed. The chanting stopped. The light dimmed, and the observers above shifted like a dark tide. A pulse ran through the floor beneath their feet, subtle but powerful, a hidden system activating as the ancient ritual recognized the bond. "The oath is sealed," the translator said quietly. "Humanity has accepted the veil of truth." The commander's pulse quickened, but his face remained calm. Behind him, his second-in-command hissed under her breath, "What the hell is a veil of truth?" He didn't answer. He couldn't, not yet. But he understood enough. This wasn't just a greeting. This was a binding act. Humanity had just signed a silent contract on alien terms. As the ritual ended, the alien women lowered their hands, their faces softening with visible relief. The leader squeezed his hand gently, almost like an apology. "Now," she said softly in broken human language, "they watch." Her eyes flicked upward. The commander followed her gaze. The observers were still there, watching, waiting, and he realized then that humanity wasn't the only one being tested. The alien women were too. He straightened his shoulders, meeting those unseen eyes in the shadows. If this was a game, humanity was no pawn. And whatever lay behind that bizarre greeting and soft voices, he would find it. Because first contact wasn't about what was said out loud. It was about what everyone was too afraid to say. And this station had secrets that were begging to be unearthed. The greeting had opened a door. Now the real story would begin. The moment the ritual ended, the chamber's silence turned heavy, pressing down on everyone like invisible hands. The lights dimmed to a soft blue, casting long shadows along the curved walls, and the alien women slowly lowered their hands, their strange ceremonial glow fading into something more human, more fragile. The commander stood in the center of the ring, the alien leader's hand still resting lightly against his, and for the first time since stepping onto the station, he realized how carefully everything had been built to lead here. The greeting, the chanting, the silent observers, they weren't random. This wasn't hospitality. It was a mechanism ancient and deliberate. Humanity had just been bound to something it barely understood. The soldiers behind him shifted uneasily, fingers hovering close to their weapons, though no one dared raise them. They weren't dealing with hostiles, not exactly, but something about the way the watchers above stared down from their shadowed perches made every muscle tighten. The alien leader's soft voice broke the silence, translated in the commander's earpiece as barely more than a whisper. "Now," she said, "they will decide." Her words made the commander's chest tighten, because for the first time it hit him, they weren't the only ones being evaluated. The alien women were too. One of the alien women moved to the edge of the circle, her eyes flicking nervously toward the balconies above. The figures cloaked in black shifted, their robes rustling softly like silk against steel. They hadn't spoken a single word since the ceremony began, and yet their presence was like a blade pressed against everyone's throats. The scientists in the human team began whispering urgently, pulling data from their scanners, realizing what the commander already felt in his bones. This was a trial, and if the humans failed this part of it, everything could collapse before a single treaty was signed. The alien leader stepped closer to him, her silver-lined skin glowing faintly with a pulse that matched the rhythmic heartbeat of the station. "They are not just elders," she said softly. "They are the ones who decide which species are worthy to stand among us." Her eyes flicked to his. "You must not show fear." He almost laughed. He had walked through battlefields on fire, faced fleets with nothing but a broken rifle and a stubborn heart. Fear wasn't the problem. The problem was that he didn't yet know the rules of the game they were playing. Above, the first of the observers finally moved. One cloaked figure leaned forward, its pale, elongated hands resting on the balcony railing. When it spoke, the voice wasn't transmitted through translators. It spoke directly into their heads, a low, layered tone that felt like wind moving through a cavern. "Humanity accepts the veil of truth," it said slowly. "But does humanity understand the cost?" The commander didn't flinch, but the younger soldier beside him did. The alien leader's expression shifted. She hadn't expected them to speak so soon. The figure raised its hand, and a holographic veil unfolded across the chamber like a flowing sheet of light. It stretched from the balcony to the center of the floor, forming an image of stars, battles, ruins, and finally, a circle of alien worlds shrouded in darkness. "Centuries ago," the voice said, "this ritual was offered to a race that promised trust. They betrayed it. That betrayal cost the galaxy 1,000 years of fire." The images flickered with war. Fleets burning, planets shattered, refugees drifting through the void. "We offer this bond only to those who will not repeat history." The human soldiers stared at the image in silence. It wasn't just a cultural story. It was a warning. Humanity had been tied to their veil of truth, a pact that had ended civilizations before. The commander took a slow step forward, refusing to look away. He had seen war like that. He had lived through it, and he understood what they were really saying. "Do not betray us." The alien leader lowered her head slightly, the silver marks on her arms dimming, as if even she felt the weight of that history pressing down. "They will ask now," she whispered. "They will judge." And then the figure spoke again, this time its voice like stone breaking. "Who among humanity stands as the first?" The question echoed through the chamber. It wasn't a request. It was a demand. Someone had to step forward, someone who would represent not just the delegation but the entire species. All eyes turned to the commander. He had led the team. He was the one who accepted the alien greeting. And in that moment, there was no one else who could answer. He stepped into the center of the circle, his boots clicking against the floor. The alien leader's hand brushed his arm, not stopping him, but warning him to be careful. The holographic veil shimmered and rose around him like liquid glass, enclosing him in a sphere of light. He felt the air tighten, like the station itself was holding its breath. The observers above leaned in, their faces still hidden, but he could feel their cold, ancient eyes on him. Then the voice spoke again, softer this time. Humanity claims to trust, but trust demands truth. A thin beam of light touched his chest. Reveal yours. The translator stuttered for a moment, but the meaning was clear. This was the core of their ritual. They had revealed themselves physically as a gesture of honesty. Now they demanded humanity reveal something in return. Not skin, but something far deeper. He closed his eyes for a second, steadying his heartbeat. They didn't want speeches. They didn't want lies. They wanted to see if humanity would stand naked before history. He opened his eyes and began to speak. Not of power, not of politics, but of humanity, of the wars they had survived, the mistakes they had made, the way they had crawled through the dark to build something better. He told them of the scars humanity carried, how they were capable of both mercy and fire. He told them they did not hide from their flaws because those flaws made their strength real. The words didn't come from a script. They came from the raw place inside him that had once stood on a battlefield and refused to bow. The veil around him pulsed softly, light bending like water. The cloaked figures didn't move, but something in the air shifted. They weren't just listening. They were measuring. And in that ancient station floating in the cold dark of space, a new kind of silence fell. Not the silence of judgment, but the silence before something breaks or something begins. He didn't know yet which way it would go. But for the first time, neither did they. The light inside the chamber shifted from cold blue to a deep, burning gold as the commander's words faded into the still air, and the entire station seemed to breathe with him. The shimmering veil that wrapped around him like living glass pulsed softly, bending the golden light into waves that rippled across the walls. The alien observers above did not speak immediately, but their stillness was heavier than any sound could have been. Each cloaked figure sat motionless, like carved statues with ancient eyes hidden beneath the shadows, and the alien women who had brought the humans here held their breath as if they too were waiting to learn their fate. This was no ordinary first contact anymore. This was the moment that decided whether humanity would be welcomed or broken. The commander stood in the center of the circle, heart steady, jaw set. He'd faced alien fleets before, but this was different. On a battlefield, power was simple. Whoever fired first controlled the rhythm. But here, everything was made of silence, ritual, and unspoken meaning. The alien leader stepped closer, her silver-lined skin glowing faintly under the golden light. She didn't say a word, but the way she stood, half behind him, half beside, was enough. She wasn't judging him anymore. She was standing with him. That meant something. Finally, one of the cloaked figures above rose from its seat, moving with slow, deliberate grace. Its robe shifted like liquid shadow as it leaned forward into the light, revealing a glimpse of a long, narrow face marked with golden sigils. Humanity speaks of its scars. The voice whispered directly into their minds, its echo wrapping around them like wind through an empty canyon. But scars can be lies too, wounds healed wrong. Are your truths forged in fire? Or are they the mask of another empire waiting to rise? The human soldiers tensed. The scientists went silent. This wasn't just a question. It was an accusation woven with ancient history. Somewhere in the past, another race had stood here, sworn trust, and brought only ruin. The observers hadn't forgotten. Humanity was being measured not for what it was, but for whether it would repeat those sins. The commander lifted his head slowly, meeting the alien's gaze without flinching. "We don't wear masks," he said, his voice steady and low. "We've made mistakes. We've bled for them. We've built and destroyed. But we've learned to stand again every time. Not because we're perfect, but because we refuse to bow to fear." His words were not grand speeches, not polished diplomacy. They were stripped bare, honest, spoken by a man who had seen too much war to pretend at politics. The alien leader beside him looked up at the observers, her eyes burning with something new, hope. For years, her people had been treated like an isolated curiosity within the Galactic Council. Their culture was old, their ways misunderstood, their bonds distrusted. No species had ever accepted their greeting before. Humanity's decision to stand here now had done something no one expected. It cracked open the wall that had kept her people trapped in suspicion. She took a step closer to the commander, placing her hand lightly on his arm. Not as a ritual now, but as a sign of alliance. A murmur passed through the shadows above. The other observers leaned in, robes shifting like wind across stone. "And if your trust is broken?" the voice asked again, harder now. "If war comes again?" The commander didn't answer immediately. He let the silence hang between them like a taut wire, letting them feel his steadiness. "Then we stand," he finally said, quiet but firm. "We don't hide behind oaths. We honor them." The alien veil flickered and pulsed brighter, as if responding to his heartbeat. Across the floor, symbols began to appear. Ancient runes etched into the material itself, glowing with faint blue light. The scientists stumbled backward, stunned. Whatever this ritual was, it was older than the council itself. The alien leader whispered something in her language, a word the translator rendered only as unbound. Above, the cloaked figure straightened, raising its long hands. "Then humanity will be tested," it said. The chamber darkened as the veil dissolved into golden mist, and the walls shifted like they were alive. Panels opened to reveal dozens of narrow crystalline spires growing from the floor, each glowing with a dim inner light. A test. The human soldiers raised their rifles instinctively but froze when the commander lifted a hand. This wasn't a fight, not yet. One of the spires rose higher than the others and stopped in front of the commander. "Step forward," the voice said. "Show us not your words, but what lies beneath." The alien leader inhaled sharply, recognizing the ritual. This was a trial of memory, an ancient way of seeing a being's soul without violence. No one could fake it. No one could hide behind diplomacy or force. If he stepped into the spire, it would show the observers everything they needed to know about what kind of creature a human truly was. He took a single step forward, then another. His soldiers tried to stop him, but he raised his hand again, steady as ever. "I've faced worse," he muttered. When his palm touched the surface of the crystal, it melted around his hand like water, and a surge of heat and light rushed through his chest. The chamber vanished. In its place, stars unfolded like endless rivers of fire, and fragments of his memories began to appear. His first deployment at the edge of a burned world, the scream of engines, the thunder of alien bombardments, the faces of comrades lost. He saw humanity through his own eyes, not as polished history but as the raw, unfiltered truth. Brave, flawed, stubborn, broken and yet unyielding. The observers saw it too. They saw humanity refusing to kneel even when the sky itself burned. They saw the rage and the mercy. They saw the choice to build, again and again, even after everything fell apart. Back in the chamber, the crystal cracked with a low, resonant sound. The mist exploded outward in a soft rush of light, and the commander fell to one knee, breathing hard but unbroken. The alien leader rushed forward, catching his arm, her voice sharp with concern. But he waved her off and stood straight again. The observers didn't speak immediately. They didn't need to. Their silence was different now. It wasn't judgment anymore. It was the quiet weight of respect. The lead figure finally lowered its hood, revealing a face as ancient as carved stone, its golden markings shifting like molten light. "Humanity remembers its scars," the voice whispered, no longer cold, "and does not hide." The alien leader lowered her head slowly, a gesture her people reserved only for monumental moments. Around her, the other alien women bowed too. The commander understood then. He hadn't just passed their test. He had changed something. Their culture had waited centuries for someone to stand here without fear, to meet their honesty with their own. Humanity had just done what no other species dared. Outside the station, hidden ships began to move. Council fleets, alien vessels, forces that had been waiting to see if humanity would falter. But now, whispers were already spreading through the stars. Humanity had not only survived the veil of truth, it had claimed it, and the galaxy was listening. The air inside the station had changed. It wasn't just lighter now, it felt charged, alive, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath with the rest of the galaxy. The veil of truth trial had ended, and the commander had stood unbroken, showing the alien observers the raw, unfiltered truth of what humanity really was. No carefully crafted image, no diplomatic performance, no mask. Just a species that bled, stumbled, raged, and rose again. For the first time since the humans had stepped foot inside this station, the watchers above shifted their weight not with suspicion but with something sharper, quieter, respect mixed with caution. They had seen power, not the kind that comes from fleets or weapons, but the kind that comes from refusing to kneel when the universe expects it. The alien leader stood beside him, her glowing silver markings flickering like soft waves across her skin, and the other alien women slowly lowered their heads toward him. In their culture, this was no small gesture. It was the gesture reserved for those who had earned a place inside their inner trust, a place reserved only for those who survived the veil. Behind him, the human soldiers straightened, their earlier unease slowly shifting into a different kind of silence. One filled with the knowledge that their commander had just stepped into something far bigger than any of them had expected. They had arrived here as diplomats. Now they were standing inside a legend. High above, the lead observer lowered its hood fully. The golden sigils on its face burned softly in the air, like living fire in the dark. Humanity, the voice whispered into their minds, smooth and heavy. You have done what no species has done in 2 centuries. You did not hide, you did not bend, you did not disguise your scars. You showed us what you are. For that, the circle will listen. A murmur rolled through the balconies. The other cloaked figures shifted, their dark robes catching the golden light that filled the chamber. The circle. The commander understood now. This wasn't just a greeting ritual. This was a gate, a filter. Only those who passed the veil could stand before the Council of Elders who held more power in the galactic political web than most governments admitted existed. Humanity had just been invited into a conversation that empires had spent generations trying to access. But not everyone in the room was pleased. A shadowed figure to the far left rose slowly, its presence colder, sharper than the others. And yet, the voice cut through the air like the edge of a blade. The last species that stood here also spoke of trust. They showed their scars. And then they burned a dozen worlds. Why should we believe humanity will not do the same? The tension that had just begun to ease snapped back like stretched wire. The soldiers behind the commander stiffened. The scientists exchanged worried glances. And the alien leader's hand tightened at her side. She knew this part was coming. Someone always opposed. The circle was not one mind. The commander didn't move at first. He had faced battles where the enemy's artillery rained fire across the sky. This, compared to that, was nothing. But he knew this moment mattered more than any battlefield. One wrong word and everything they had built in this strange ritual could collapse like smoke. He took a step forward, his boots echoing in the vast chamber, and raised his head toward the shadowed figure. Because we are not them, he said simply. We are not the past. The figure's golden markings pulsed with irritation. All species say that, it hissed, before they spill blood. The commander didn't back down. And yet, he replied, voice low and steady, we're the only species standing here who knows what it's like to have almost lost everything. We've buried our dead on 100 worlds. We've stood against fleets stronger than ours and walked through fire when the council turned their backs. We don't promise perfection. We promise that when the galaxy tests us, we stand. A ripple moved through the circle, quiet but undeniable. They hadn't expected defiance wrapped in calm. They hadn't expected a species that would speak to them like equals, not beg them like supplicants. The alien leader beside him tilted her head, a small, almost invisible smile forming on her lips. She had brought them here for a reason, and now the circle was beginning to understand why. The opposing figure stepped back slowly, still wary but silent now. The lead observer looked at the commander with something dangerously close to curiosity. "Then stand," it said finally. "But understand this, passing the veil is not the end. It is the beginning. Those who wear its mark are bound by its law. If you betray this trust, humanity will not only fall, it will be erased from memory." The golden sigils on the floor flared once more, bright and blinding, and the commander's chest burned as the veil's mark settled beneath his skin. A faint golden shimmer that faded just as quickly as it came. The bond was sealed. Humanity was now tied to them in ways no council treaty could undo. But as the glow faded, a sudden pulse shuddered through the floor. Alarms, low and steady, began to hum through the structure. The alien women exchanged sharp glances, their calm composure cracking for the first time. The alien leader's head snapped toward the far doors. Something was happening outside the chamber. Something the circle had not planned. A young alien woman rushed in through the open archway, her breath ragged, her voice trembling. She spoke quickly in her own tongue, her hands shaking. The commander's translator caught only fragments. Fleet, council ships, breach. The alien leader's silver glow flickered sharply. "They came too soon," she whispered. "They were not supposed to move yet." The lead observer stood, its tall frame radiating cold power. "The council," it said. "They have come to claim the humans before the ritual can be sealed." The commander felt the weight of those words settle like steel in his gut. He understood now why the alien leader had looked so nervous from the moment the greeting began. This ritual wasn't just a greeting or a test. It was a race against time. Someone in the council didn't want humanity tied to the veil. Someone had moved to erase this moment before it could shift the balance of power. The alien leader turned toward him, her voice steady despite the rising panic around them. "If they reach this chamber," she said, "everything ends. They will kill the bond, and they will take your people as prisoners." The human soldiers raised their weapons instinctively. The commander looked toward the door, his face calm, but his mind sharp and fast. He'd walked into something bigger than a cultural exchange. But they weren't leaving quietly. He turned to his people. "Lock down the entrance," he ordered softly. "No one walks us out of here in chains." The alien leader stepped forward, standing beside him like a blade drawn from its sheath. The other alien women followed suit, their elegant forms now sharp, dangerous, no longer just ceremonial figures. The circle watched from above, silent but not unmoved. Humanity had passed their trial. Now it would have to prove it deserved to keep that victory. The alarms grew louder. Somewhere outside the chamber, council ships descended like storm clouds. The first contact had begun with laughter and surprise. Now it stood on the edge of fire. The alarms didn't scream. They growled, low and deep, like the voice of something ancient waking up after centuries of silence. Red and silver warning lights pulsed across the chamber's curved walls, painting the alien architecture in streaks of shadow and blood. The alien women turned their heads in perfect unison, their serene expressions finally breaking into unease. Above, the circle of cloaked observers shifted restlessly, their golden markings flaring against the dim light like the eyes of predators that suddenly smelled war. What began as a ceremonial greeting was now on the edge of turning into a galactic storm. The commander's soldiers raised their weapons automatically, spreading out in a protective perimeter around the delegation, their movements clean and sharp. The alien leader stepped closer to him, no longer the calm guide from the greeting hall, but a blade drawn from its scabbard. "They're here," she whispered, her voice tight, every word coiled with urgency. "The Council's strike fleet has entered orbit. They've sent shock units to intercept before the bond can be confirmed on record." Her people had expected opposition, but not this quickly. Someone in the Galactic Council had been watching every step, waiting for the perfect moment to crush this alliance before it could take root. The lead observer rose slowly, towering over the chamber from the balcony. "The Council intends to erase this." Its voice rumbled through their skulls like a storm. "If they destroy the bond before it is sealed in the archive, humanity will not be recognized. You will vanish from their records as if this night never happened." The circle's robes rustled like falling leaves, some of the observers watching in silence, others clearly debating among themselves, their golden sigils flashing in sharp rhythms. Not all of them agreed with what was happening. Not all of them wanted to resist the council. The commander straightened his shoulders, his face calm but his mind moving like a blade through smoke. He had fought battles where the odds were worse than this. The difference now was that this wasn't just about a fight, it was about being erased. The alien leader's eyes locked onto his. "If the fleet breaches the station," she said softly, "your kind will be taken as prisoners or worse, presented as a threat, and they will break everything we built here." "Then we hold the line," he answered without hesitation. His soldiers didn't need further orders. They moved with silent efficiency, sealing the entrance, placing their boots in solid stances, ready to meet whatever came through. The alien women, the same ones who had once greeted them with laughter and ritual, now moved like warriors. Their long ceremonial robes tore at the sides, revealing sleek, dark armor underneath. They had been ready for this all along. This greeting had never been safe. It had always been a gamble. The floor beneath their feet vibrated softly as enemy dropships began to enter the lower docking rings. Through the viewing arch, flashes of light could be seen in orbit, council cruisers forming a blockade around the station. The sound of approaching boots echoed down the distant corridors. The enemy wasn't wasting time. They were here to cut the thread before it could be tied. The commander glanced up at the circle. "You're supposed to be the oldest power in the galaxy," he said evenly, his voice carrying through the chamber. "You've been watching empires rise and fall for centuries. So are you going to sit up there and whisper about consequences while they wipe us off the map? Or are you going to choose a side?" The lead observer tilted its long, angular head. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then its golden markings flared bright, and its voice shook the walls. "Seal the chamber." Massive doors of shimmering metal slammed down like thunder, locking the chamber away from the outside. Dozens of silent guardian constructs, towering machines built from dark alloy, stepped out from hidden alcoves along the walls. They stood between the humans, the alien women, and the oncoming storm. The circle had made their choice. "If humanity stands," the voice boomed, "then the circle will stand with them." The commander's heart thudded once in his chest. Not from fear, but from the heavy weight of history shifting. The alien leader smiled faintly, something fierce flashing in her silver-lined eyes. "You've done something no species has ever done," she whispered. "You made them choose." The first breach came fast. A council shock unit slammed against the outer door, the impact shaking the entire chamber. A second blast followed, harder, then a third. The steel vibrated, dust falling from the ceiling like snow. The commander raised his rifle, his soldiers forming two defensive lines. The alien warriors took positions along the flanks, their hands glowing with the strange pulse of their energy blades. For the first time, humans and this alien species stood shoulder to shoulder, not as strangers bound by a strange greeting, but as allies standing against a common enemy. The door split open with a blinding flash, and council troops poured in, armored, faceless, efficient. They didn't shout. They didn't warn. They came to erase. But what they met wasn't fear. It was fire. The first volley of human gunfire roared like thunder, the sound filling the golden chamber and turning the soft ceremonial air into something hard, metallic, real. Alien warriors joined in, their blades cutting through the air like streaks of light. The circle's guardian constructs moved with terrifying precision, slamming through enemy lines like living stone. The battle was brutal and fast. This wasn't a war for conquest. It was a fight for memory, for existence, for the right to remain. The commander moved through the chaos like a ghost from an old war. His rifle barked with sharp precision, each shot finding its mark. A blast caught him on the shoulder, spinning him, but he didn't fall. The alien leader fought beside him, her movements a blur of elegance and fury. Their bond was no longer ceremonial. It was sealed in the way soldiers understand best, through blood, through the fight to live another minute. When the last council soldier fell, the chamber fell silent again, broken only by the slow hiss of smoke rising from the scorched floor. The alien warriors stood breathing hard, their once elegant robes now torn and stained. The human soldiers lowered their weapons, eyes still sharp, waiting for another wave. But none came. Outside, the remaining council ships had pulled back. Not because they couldn't destroy the station, but because the circle had chosen its side, and no one in the galaxy had the nerve to fight them directly. The lead observer stepped down from the balcony for the first time, its long robe trailing behind it like black water. It approached the commander slowly, its golden sigils flickering with quiet power. "Humanity," it said, voice steady now. "You have walked into our fire, and you did not break. You stood with us against the council. The veil is sealed. You are no longer guests. You are bound." The alien leader stood beside him, her breathing slowing, her hands still trembling from the battle. "This," she whispered, "will change everything. The council will not forget tonight, but neither will the stars." The commander stared at the door where the enemy had fallen. He knew the truth of wars. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something larger, something dangerous. But it was also the first time humanity had stepped into galactic politics not as pawns, but as equals. And as the circle's sigils burned like small suns around them, their bond was etched into the fabric of the galaxy. A single, undeniable fact that no fleet could erase. Humanity had arrived. Thank you for listening to this story. If you enjoyed it, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more HFY Sci-Fi tales. Your support keeps these stories alive, and the stars have many more secrets to tell.